He never lost a major battle. By 30, he ruled from the Aegean toward the edge of India. He was the architect of an empire that defied the maps of his time. But in Babylon, at the peak of his power and the edge of his greatest ambitions, history stopped him cold. This is the real story of Alexander III of Macedon. Myths wrapped around him in his own lifetime, obscuring the man behind the crown. To understand him, we must look past the legend and follow the record that survives. This film is reconstructed from classical histories, archaeological evidence, and the very ground he actually crossed, from the hills of Macedonia to the rivers of India. Alexander was born around 356 BCE at Pella. He was the son of King Philip II, a master of statecraft, and the formidable Olympias, who claimed a divine lineage. He didn't just inherit a throne. He entered a kingdom being forged into the most efficient war machine in the ancient world, a phalanx of iron and discipline. His education was as rigorous as his military training. Tutored by Aristotle, the prince learned philosophy, politics, and the science of the natural world. He was obsessed with the Homeric ideals of glory, sleeping with a copy of the Iliad beneath his pillow. He didn't just want to rule, he wanted to be the next Achilles. Philip taught him how kingdoms are taken. Aristotle taught him how they are understood. Alexander learned early that true power requires both a sharp mind and a sharp sword. Early signs of his command appeared when he tamed Bucephalus, a horse no one else could ride. It was a partnership that would last until the edge of the world. In 336 BCE, the forge was suddenly extinguished. Philip II was assassinated, leaving a vacuum that many expected to consume the young, unproven prince. Instead, at just 20 years old, Alexander seized the moment. Rivals were eliminated, and Greek resistance was systematically broken to secure his rear. With Greece secured, the grand campaign against the Achaemenid Persian Empire, his father's dream, became his inheritance and his obsession. In 334 BCE, he crossed into Asia. Tradition says he threw a spear into the sand, claiming the entire continent as spear-won land. At the Granicus River, he met the Persian satraps. It was a brutal test of his new phalanx, and his first great victory in Asia. The road was now open. In Gordium, he faced the famous knot. Legend says he sliced it with his sword. History records a mind that refused to be entangled by traditional problems. The stakes escalated at Issus in 333 BCE. Here, Alexander faced the great king, Darius III, directly for the first time on a narrow, restricted field. In a stunning tactical maneuver, Alexander broke the Persian line. Darius was forced to flee the field, leaving his family and his pride behind. But victory wasn't always fast. Cities that resisted, like the fortress of Tyre, learned that Alexander's patience was as dangerous as his charge. The 7-month siege showed a relentless, engineering-driven commander. He literally built a road through the sea to reach their impenetrable walls. Egypt received him as a liberator. He was crowned pharaoh, merging the traditions of Greece with the ancient power of the Nile. He founded Alexandria, a city designed to be the intellectual heart of the world. It would become his most enduring monument. He traveled deep into the desert to the Siwa oasis, seeking the oracle of Zeus Ammon to confirm a destiny he was beginning to believe was divine. The final reckoning came in 331 BCE at Gaugamela. Darius massed his full imperial might on a vast level plain, prepared for the Macedonian charge. It was for nothing. Alexander's diagonal strike shattered the Persian heart. The empire of the Achaemenids effectively collapsed that day. Babylon opened its gates without a fight. The title King of Asia was no longer an ambition, it was a political reality. In Persepolis, the ancient heart of Persia was burned. Whether an accident or a symbolic act of revenge, the old world was gone. Darius was later killed by his own nobles. Alexander pursued the killers, framing himself not as an invader, but as the legitimate successor to the throne. But as the empire grew, so did the internal strain. He began adopting Persian customs, causing deep friction with his own Macedonian officers. The war in Central Asia was a grind of guerrilla tactics and hard frontier fighting. Victory never brought him rest, it only brought more exhaustion. In Susa, he attempted a mass fusion of cultures, marrying his officers to Persian noblewomen. He was trying to build a new unified world. In 326 BCE, he reached the Hydaspes River in India. There, he faced King Porus and a terrifying new weapon, the war elephant. The battle was a blood-soaked victory, among the hardest of his career. Alexander was so moved by Porus's courage that he restored him to power. But at the Hydaspes River, the machine finally broke. His men, exhausted by 8 years of war and tropical rains, refused to go a single step further. For the first time, the undefeated Alexander met a wall he could not charge through, the limit of human endurance and loyalty. He was forced to turn back. The return march through the Gadrosian desert was a catastrophe of heat and thirst. It cost him more men than any battle he had ever fought. In 324 BCE, his closest companion, Hephaestion, died. It was a blow from which Alexander never truly recovered, spiraling into a period of deep grief. He returned to Babylon in 323 BCE, his mind still racing with plans for new campaigns into Arabia and the West. But his body was failing. In June, a sudden, violent fever took hold. For 12 days, the conqueror of the world lay in a palace room, unable to speak as his strength ebbed away. His veteran soldiers filed past his bed in silence, a final farewell to the leader who had taken them to the edge of the known world. Alexander died at the age of 32. The exact cause, whether disease, exhaustion, or something more sinister, remains a mystery of history. With no secure adult heir, he reportedly said his empire should go to the strongest. The words sparked decades of civil war. His generals tore the empire apart, carving out their own dynasties. The unity he had forged by the sword did not outlast his final breath. But his true conquest was cultural. From the Mediterranean to the Indus, Greek language, cities, and ideas took permanent root. The Hellenistic age, a world unified by Greek thought, trade, and art, was the unintended but magnificent monument to his ambition. Cities named Alexandria still dot the map today, from Egypt to Afghanistan, markers of a man who remade the world's geography in a decade. He was born a prince and died as a master of a world too large for one life. He had reached the horizon and then surpassed it. He proved that while an empire can fracture, the mark of an undefeated mind remains immortal. Alexander was gone, but the world was forever changed.